button, I had a request to record this for those people who could not join us. So you might be getting a pop-up in your Zoom window that says, hey, do you want to consent to being recorded? If you click yes, you can stay in the meeting. If you're like, no, I'm on the lam, I don't want the fuzz to get me, that's cool, I understand that. Go ahead and you can bail out, and then maybe you can watch the recording after the fact. So you win regardless. Sound good? All right, I think we're good to go. So my name is Jill Stott. I work for Excella Training, and I am working with my colleague and friend, Danny Junot. Would you mind introducing yourself, please?
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Danny Junot. I'm a senior training coordinator with Excella Training, and a colleague, and Jill, a friend of Jill's. How about that?
Do you think we're friends? Are we friends? Can I say that?
I think we're friends now. Yes, yes.
Okay,
I think we could say
should just
that.
say colleague, and that friend thing slipped out. Awesome sauce.
Yeah.
Well, welcome everybody. We're glad to have you here. So let's jump in. Let me hide this. So I think this is interesting. This, with all this weird stuff that's happening in the world right now, I just think it's an opportunity to do things differently. And I keep thinking this quote: "Necessity is the mother of invention." When push comes to shove, we find humans are adaptable. We find new ways to do things. We potentially could change the world depending on how long things go on. So real quick, a little bit about Excella Training, soon to be known as Next Step Solutions. We are changing our name and our brand. We have some very highly experienced trainers. We have years of practical experience.
It's a violent gate, even though it's like whatever, it's still like.
Danny, can you handle that, please? Thank you. He's like the bouncer. You're my bouncer.
That's right. Very intimidating.
We're kind of a premium training group. We have a dedicated, responsive training support staff, Danny being one of those people. A lot of groups don't have that option. We have an exceptional end-to-end experience. If you want to take additional trainings after this class, we will share some different options and links that you can go and sign up for those. We also provide customized private training options in Agile. Oh, by the way, this isn't really that relevant anymore, but we do have amazing food. If you come to our in-person classes, like, it is so good. People rave about them. They come back just for the food. And we have great training facilities, and now online training facilities. All right. So today we're going to talk about handling unexpected issues when you're doing online meetings or trainings, how to make it more interactive, creating a sense of presence for everybody on the group, and building your virtual social networks. At the end, we'll have an opportunity to have just some open Q&A, and then we'll wrap up. We're planning on staying online for 15 minutes after the hour if you would like to have additional questions answered or suggestions or just some witty banter. So this is gonna move fast. We only have an hour. And so it's kind of like an overview. And if you want to learn more, I'm more than happy to chat with you offline. We will have a couple of interactive experiences. I really wanted this to be a working session. With so many people, we've had to limit it a little bit, but there'll be some opportunities for your feedback. Again, if bandwidth becomes an issue, if things start to go south, then we'll all turn off our video cameras, and then we should probably be fine. And the training will be recorded and distributed later. And please ask questions. Feel free to interrupt me and say, hey, Jill, I didn't understand that, or I have a question, or I have a suggestion. That's great. Also, please liberally use the chat. If you have some ideas that you want to share with the rest of this group, please feel free to add those to the chat. Danny will be monitoring the chat closely, so we welcome your feedback. All right, let's start with a poll. Why do virtual meetings suck? I'm going to go ahead and open a poll. This is a feature that comes with a lot of these online tools. You should see, if you have your polling enabled, you will see a little rectangle that has a question. It says, why do online meetings suck? Does anyone see that on your screen?
Yes.
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 And sometimes I've noticed people don't, their company has blocked the polling feature. So you can see the question here. I'm sharing it on my screen. You could comment on the group chat if you don't see the polling option. So let's just take a few
I have
seconds
to pick
to,
one.
all right, just a few more seconds. And if I have other, if there's something I don't have in this poll, what are some other reasons you think all of the above? Thank you, Ron. I'm missing the all of the above. I should have added that. Brilliant, brilliant. Yes. Okay, cool beans. Looks like most people have that option. So, oh yes, yes, fantastic. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and end the poll and let's look at the results. And I click share results. And you should be able to see the results. So it looks like 40% of you said unengaged participants, technical challenges, and other. I think we have some people describing what the others are in chat, and I can't read the body language. So exactly, I feel the same way. It's really easy to get distracted when we're having online conversations for various reasons. So thank you for participating.
Yeah,
So,
and that's a really great point too, Jill, just to call out, Kelly makes a point that she said other because people don't know how to run an effective in-person meeting. So then once you move that online, it highlights, you know, the weakness of a poorly run in-person meeting to
that's
begin with.
brilliant. I'm going to steal that. That's a really good point. It just makes it even worse, right? A lot of the same techniques that we use in person, we need to also use in our online versions. And I have some facilitation techniques that work for in-person and out-of-person, non-person, virtual options. Okay, thank you. So, handling unexpected issues. So, one of the problems we've been doing some online training for quite a while, and I'll have like 50 people in the room, and then somebody loses their connection, or I have bandwidth issues, and it's just a big pain in the patootie. So, a couple of techniques. These are just some practical tools. At the beginning of all of my online meetings, I do what's called a check-in. So, before I begin, I have everybody one at a time say like a word like, oh, how are you feeling today? Give me a single word, or what's your favorite beverage in the morning? And then each person does that. And that's a way to kind of get to know each other a little bit better, and also to verify that your audio is working and your video is working. And it only takes a minute or two to do that. In addition, I suggest that you have a plan if somebody gets dropped, because it will happen. So, okay, if one of us loses their connection and they're removed from the meeting, what are we going to do? Are we going to pause and wait for that person to rejoin? Are we just going to continue and then catch that person up later? Are we just going to be like, sucks to be Bob? Oh, well. So just have a plan and an agreement on what you're going to do together as an organization. This is probably a no-brainer. Make sure you have high quality hardware in your web services. So audio devices, I actually had a headset that I stole from one of my colleagues. Sorry, Tiffany. And I found that it was actually, for my computer, it was better just to use my computer speaker. So you want to test those options and see what works best for you. Having a good microphone. I know my CEO, Steve, has said that, hey, I'll buy you this really $3,000 microphone to make sure that we have really effective trainings. Right, Steve?
I don't know if
Just kidding. Love you, buddy. All right, webcams. Everyone should have a webcam. I know part of the problem is like we're super close. An option is to get an external one. I bought one for 20 bucks on Amazon. Make sure you have decent internet bandwidth. I have a green screen that I bought. If you try to get one right now on Amazon, they are all back ordered. That does help. Well, you see mine's not working very well. It does help your backgrounds look a little bit better. Good Wi-Fi, and then test, and test again. So we spend a lot of times just doing experiments with, I'll grab someone, hey, do you have a second? We can test some of these tools out before I actually have our online meeting. Is very useful. Another thing I recommend is when you're doing an online meeting, there are so many things you have to do simultaneously. It makes it very hard to be an effective facilitator when I have 7 different screens open. I'm trying to share with people. I'm trying to answer my chat. I'm trying to like deal with the dog who's barking in the background. I highly suggest you delegate responsibilities every time you have an online meeting. For example, have somebody else besides yourself, if you're the one running the meeting, take and share notes. Like with Danny, like, hey, Danny, I can't type notes while I'm talking and facilitating. Can you please do the needful?
Yep, I got you, Jill.
Buddy. All right, sharing content. A lot of times we'll have a second person who actually is doing the online screen share and then have one person facilitating. And then someone who's a good facilitator, they're the person who's managing the entire conversation. That's a skill set in and of itself. We are actually going to be doing a facilitation training coming up at Excella Training, how to have an effective conversation, making sure all the voices are heard and we arrive to a conclusion and it's not just a bunch of people looking out the window and wishing they were somebody else, somewhere else. Again, someone to monitor the chat. I wish I could like talk and look at your cute faces and out of the chat at the same time, but I can't. So it's great to have somebody. You're in charge of the chat. Will you please check that? Danny's doing too many things at once, probably, huh?
All right. I got you covered.
He's great like that. All right, I'm talking 100 miles an hour. Any questions so far or comments? Let's open it up for a second before we move to the next slide. Oh, okay. So meetings are unpredictable. People are unpredictable. For some reason, we have this mindset that, hey, if I'm on an online meeting or a training, it's going to be like going to a movie and a show where everything's pre-planned and predictable. But that's not the case. It will never be the case. They're probably more unpredictable given the technical nature and the different tools that have to work in order for things to be good. So I emphasize this in a couple of the virtual trainings I've done in the last couple of weeks. We need to just adapt on the fly. I love this quote, perfection is the enemy of good. Let's just relax, prepare to be flexible. Hey, someone might just drop off, their audio might go crazy. That's okay. There might be a dog barking or Danny's son might be crying in the background. We deal with that and we adapt and make it effective. Take an experimental approach. Some things are going to fail. So I was running a training yesterday and I was using this new tool I hadn't before to have everybody collaborate on the same file. And they just got really confused. So I'm like, okay, scrap that. Let's just do it in a different way. And that's okay. That was a learning experience. And keep it casual, relax. It's going to be fine. We're all friends. We're all here to be friends. And just be yourself. For some reason, some people get in their mind, if it's online, I have to be uber professional, wear my suit, coat, and tie. Just be yourself like you would if you were meeting face to face. All right, one of the problems why people are they tend to be unengaged in an online meeting is there's not that sense of presence that we have when we're all meeting together and we can see each other. I feel like I'm watching a show rather than actually participating in a group setting. So this little meme I wrote, I think a lot of us have all been there before, like an online meeting, I can just sit back and relax and not pay attention. So we want to kind of adjust that mentality and make these online meetings as productive and interactive as face-to-face meetings. So step one, which a lot of us are already doing today, is using our video cameras. So I'm going to do another quick poll. I know we've been talking about this for years. Turn on your camera, and very few people are comfortable doing that. So I'm curious on your opinion, why people are reluctant to use their cameras. I'm going to go ahead and open up another poll. Okay, get your opinion. Again, if you don't have the polling options, go ahead and there we go, and just add something to the chat. Oops. Well, let's see, technical difficulties. No, it's not letting me.
Let's see. Yeah, so it is some technical difficulties here. It looks like it's not populating for everyone.
here we go. Okay. There you go.
There we
See
go.
that in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
There.
Let's see. Yep, so we do see, yep, Kimberly had mentioned too much bandwidth, so lack sufficient bandwidth is there. Multitasking. Not properly dressed is a good one. I think, yes, we all can take responsibility for our own, for the clothes, yeah, however. For instance, Jill, we were talking, I mean, casually, like I would wear something like this on a normal day-to-day, but it's not necessarily office ready. For instance, my most recent
People
trip
see
to
you how
Disney World.
you really are. It's scary.
That's right.
I love this. I don't want people to see me eating. Adam, that happened to me yesterday. I had this Big Mac and I was so hungry. Danny was on the camera. I'm like, turn off the camera, eat the Big Mac, turn it off. All right, fantastic. I'm gonna go ahead and end the polling. Let's see. Don't feel camera ready is number one. Interesting. I think I feel the same way. I feel like I have to go put on my face and whatnot. And a lot of times I just roll out of bed, jump on the meeting. I don't have all those pieces put into place. A couple of tips on that I've learned. One, if at least Zoom has this feature where it softens some of the wrinkles and all the stuff that makes you look a little more presentable. So I've been using that. Also, relax. It's okay. You look awesome. And if, what are some other thoughts? Like how to mitigate those concerns? Like I don't feel comfortable being seen on camera. I'm curious. What are some other perspectives on this?
So I can tell
Hi.
you.
Oh,
Hey, Nicole.
hey. I was just gonna say that it's a mixed bag. So I do it with my team. So like when we have stand-ups and team-only meetings, everybody feels comfortable being in whatever ripped up t-shirt there is, showing video. But with our customer meetings, obviously everybody's off video because our customers aren't even showing video as well. So that's kind of the compromise that we're doing right now.
That makes sense. Have some casual meetings and some, hey, we need to dress up because we're meeting with customers. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hi, this is Steve Mowbray, and since you asked that question, one of the things I like to do at the beginning of the meeting is make two comments and basic rules for the event. And one is, if you're working from home, the people that live there live there. So it's okay if your kids or dogs or spouses are making noise in the background. That's all fine and perfectly acceptable, and it makes it a little more fun to hear them anyway. So never worry about them, provided they're wearing, that they're not running around in their underwear. But and the second thing is go ahead and let people know that, however you show up is however you show up. If you happen to be in your sweatpants or your sweatshirts or whatever, that's just how you are at home, and it's your home and you're allowed to do that. And sometimes I'll often wear funny clothes or a funny hat from time to time just to help ease the mood. But I like to get those two things out early in the meeting as part of the working agreements.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing, Steve. I appreciate your comments. I love that. Like people who live there. It's a different environment.
There was
Sorry,
also
Danny, yes.
another really good comment that was in the chat. Elle mentioned, and then it was seconded by somebody. Steve, I'm going to take you up on that funny hat business really quick.
Oh no, Steve, what have you done?
Yeah, so you did it. But no, there was the comment that one of the reasons why people don't like to share is multitasking. So if you are trying to engage in the virtual meeting, but at the same time, you don't want to maybe pull distraction or show that you're actually trying to do more things than just be present in the meeting.
Oh, wow. That is a very good point. Ooh, and that's why we
Good
should
job,
use our
Elle.
cameras. Thank you. Any other comments from the chat, Daniel?
I think so. There was a lot of comments that were more about camera ready, just in terms of clothes and feeling presentable. I think that from a professional standpoint, Elle's comment about multitasking was probably the best one there. So good work, Elle. Second gold star of the day.
You need to give me like virtual stars. on your forehead. Okay, allowing for instant feedback. So it's tempting as soon as we jump on an online call, due to background noise or whatever, we all put ourselves on mute except for the one person who's talking. I highly encourage you to limit that. So when I started training, like, please just keep yourselves off mute so we can have a more natural conversation. So when somebody says something funny, you get that immediate feedback, or ask a question and there's not like a long pause before somebody answers it. The only exception is, again, if the mailman is here and your dog starts barking, I say, oh, go ahead and put yourself on mute, so we don't disrupt the flow. Creating the online meeting working agreements. So we talk a lot about having team agreements. Hey, here's how we're going to show up when we meet together. Here's the expectations we have from each other. I also recommend that you actually have this conversation at the beginning of each meeting, or if you meet with the same group of people each time, say, hey, what are we going to agree to when we meet together online? So what are some examples? If everyone can just like shout them out or put them in chat of some working agreements you would establish in your online meetings. So one, let me give you an example to start. Oh, I love this, judgment-free zone, within reason. Absolutely, active listening, yes.
Hi, Jill, this is Jessica.
Hey, Jessica.
Hi, when we have our meetings, we usually let everybody know if it's gonna be recorded or not, just so they are prepared that at the time of the meeting, you know, this is gonna be a permanent file somewhere, so they're aware.
They'll show up differently in that case. That's interesting, Jessica.
Yes.
It's kind of a motivator, plus you can have that in the archives if you want to refer to it again. Thank you. Expectations about cameras. Thank you. Exactly. Like every meeting you have, you don't have to have your cameras. If I'm meeting at 6 a.m., do not ask me to have my camera on. If it's something during the day, then yes, let's all have our cameras on and see each other and read our body language together. Let's see, Daniel, what else do you see from the chat?
Let's see. Let's see. Allow others to speak. What happens if you can't make the meeting?
A contingency plan. I can't make it. Shoot out an
mhm.
email. Sometimes you're like, oh, Bob was supposed to join. I wonder what happened to Bob. Maybe he got in a car accident. I don't know. Make sure you communicate that out and you have a
Is this
plan.
Pam Squires?
Yes.
Hey, my name is Dan Curry. I got you as a referral from Malika with, oh my gosh, I just forgot the name of the law firm. Hold on one second. Malika Evans from the Myerson Law Group.
Hey, Daniel, are you?
Yep, they referred you to do a, it's for the FERs, the Federal Employee Health Benefits.
Oh, awesome.
Requires a
Okay,
court order
Daniel,
acceptable for processing from Anna's trust saving plan.
thank you. I'd love to hear more
Investigations
about that. But what we are right in the middle of a webinar. If
Sure.
you can go ahead and send us a chat, we will respond. Thank you. Okay, well, that was interesting. Okay, so online agreement.
Everyone, if anyone's virtual, everyone's virtual. I've been in meetings where I've been one of the few virtual people, and it's like, just send me an email with what you guys came up with, because I can't see what you're writing on the board. I can't see what you're doing in the room. So it's not very engaging.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate that, because I've been assuming that everybody is virtual, and a lot of times that's not the case. We have a core set of people who are meeting face-to-face, and then we have some online participants. And unfortunately, a lot of times those online participants get ignored. And I think it's super important when you're creating these online agreements that we include those people. We write things on the web chat rather than on a whiteboard, because you cannot see those in the background, and make it more inclusive. And that's something you should have as a conversation going forward. Thank you for bringing that up. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, we've got some interesting stuff going on in the chat, Jill. So we had some guest, well, Kimberly brought it up, and then it looks like Hunter is wanting to know more about Zoom bombing. How do you handle Zoom bombing when a participant takes over your virtual meeting?
Okay, so I just read an article about Zoom bombing. Has anyone heard of this? It freaked me out. So there's an article in the New York, is it the New York Times or whatever, that a colleague sent this morning, that people, they will join random webinars and then post inappropriate pictures or take over the meeting and ruin it for everybody because they think it's funny. That freaked me out. And so I had originally had my settings in Zoom that anyone could share at any time. So in Zoom, I went and turned that off. So only me as the host can share content on the screen. It's hard to prevent them from saying something insane, right? These people, it's probably a random thing that happens, but something to be aware of. As soon as that happens, as a host and a co-host, and maybe Danny, I assign you as the bouncer. If somebody comes in and starts bombing, the quicker you turn that off, mute that person, and then kick them out would be advised. So just be aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
We also had, so Jill, also we talked about multitasking before in regards to people, their comfort level being camera ready or being on camera. We have Sean asking, what is the extent of acceptable multitasking?
That is interesting, and that's a great conversation to have when you're coming up with your online working agreements. You know, maybe if you're having a 4-hour meeting and expecting everyone to be like 100% glued to the screen is not realistic, particularly if I'm getting Slack messages from Danny saying, oh my gosh, we have a fire, come and help me. I think that's a great conversation and something to add to your agreements. All right, great. All right, going on to the next section, make it as interactive as you can. So a lot of times we set up our online webinars and it's one person talking and maybe presenting a slide deck, and the rest of us are just like mute participants. The more people are engaging in your meeting, the more effective it will be and the more valuable it will be. There are so many online collaboration tools, like more than I can possibly list out. I've already been using a bunch, but then during this the COVID-19, the fun we're having, we've discovered a billion more tools that we can use to make these meetings more collaborative. A lot of it is experimenting with which tools will work for you best. So here's a couple that we have found are very effective and easy, and most of them are free. Some have a surcharge, which might be worthwhile to make your meetings more effective. One, most online tools like Zoom, WebEx, Teams have the ability to chat. Use that liberally. Some people aren't comfortable speaking up for one reason or another, or they have background noise. Make sure you use that alternate way of communicating. Using annotations. So most of the tools, you can enable annotations so people can actually write or scribe right there on the screen, which is a great way to take a quick poll or get feedback from people, and they can use different colors and you can see who's doing which comment. The use of breakout rooms. I was going to do some breakout rooms in this group, but it got a little too big, and that's okay. So most online virtual tools have breakout rooms. If I have a group of more than, I don't know, 12 people, that tends to be only 3 people doing most of the talking. And we want to get all people involved in the conversation when we're making decisions or problem solving or coming up with new ideas. So if you use breakout rooms, it's a really cool tool that takes whoever's in your online group, say we have 66 people right now, and automatically place them into separate rooms, if we will, virtual rooms with a separate phone line and connection and video share. And they break out and they can have a conversation, say with 4 people, you give them some question or something to noodle on. And then you bring them all back into the main room. It's like 3 clicks of a button, and then you share the results. Very effective way to facilitate a larger meeting. Using the nonverbal icons. For those of you who want to click on your Manage Participants if you haven't already. Option down there at the bottom of your Zoom window. You'll see the list of everybody here on our meeting, and at the bottom you'll see some little icons, like there's a green yes button, a no button, a raise your hand button. Use those as well. In Zoom, you have to activate those in your settings. And also, if you're using WebEx, it's a different offering. You'll have to investigate those and try those before you use them. Sharing your screen, we all know it's important to share your screen. People are visual, not just audio learners. Sharing your documents. There's a lot of different ways to do that through Google Docs. I can't stop laughing at the hats. Okay, you can share them. You can collaborate on the same document at the same time. Also, you can send them through the chat really quick, really easy. I've already demonstrated the use of polls. I'm using Zoom's polling feature, but there are a lot of other external polls that you can use. For example, Mentimeter, you go to mentimeter.com, you can use their polling options. You can embed them right into your PowerPoint, or you can have people go up to that site and take your polls. SurveyMonkey is another polling tool that we've been using, and Poll Everywhere. I see that's a very common one to get people involved with the conversation. Also Trello, you can get Trello for free. I love free things. You do need to register for it, but it helps everybody see what work you're doing when you're modeling your Kanban boards potentially. Miro is a new tool that one of my colleagues suggested, and it's basically an online collaborative whiteboard where everybody can edit what's happening on the screen, or they can add sticky notes. They can add their comments right there at the same time. It's like this virtual whiteboard with all these cool online tools. This does cost, I think it's like $16 a month, but it's a pretty awesome tool that we're going to incorporate into our trainings. Mural is also similar to Miro. It's an online collaborative tool that's really cool. And Steve reminded me about ideaboards.com. We used to use this back in my old job. It's free and it's great, where you can all just put up sticky notes and ideas and see things visually, as well as talk through the ideas. I did a training in SAFE last week and used this Scrum Poker.online. If you're doing Scrum and you're pointing your user stories, this is free and it doesn't require any registration. Also Scrumbler, I played a little bit with this. I was trying to find a tool where you didn't have to like give them your email address and sign up. And this is a very, very basic place where you can visualize sticky notes and everybody can share their comments at the same time. Any other ideas and tools that you have used that make your webinars and your online meetings more interactive?
And kind of to follow up on that question, Jill, someone had asked, let me see, I think Bob brought up, and this could play well into that, holding online meetings that aren't just business, they could be a sales or business pitch, as opposed to just sort of the everyday function of your company. But what if you're actually pitching something? And so what are the tools that maybe you would use for that, or how is that meeting different than a virtual meeting with your colleagues?
So if you're like less of a, that would be more, okay, let me understand that.
Yeah, so more of a sales pitch. If you are, yes, if from a customer, like a client to a customer relationship, as opposed to an intercompany meeting.
Gotcha. That's, oh, great question. That's true. It's not just, hey, we're just chit-chat with each other. If I were doing something similar, and we have similar engagements at Excella Training where we're meeting with potential clients, and if that's the case, I like to make them more quote unquote professional, where I'll put on my lady blazer, right? And then I have prepared content that I'm sharing. For example, a PowerPoint with a lot of your company logos. And it's going to be a lot more, what's the word? It might be less interactive in some cases, but you still want to have avenues for conversation.
Jill, hi, this is Bob. This is Bob,
Hey, Bob.
the author of that question.
Oh, share with me, buddy.
How are you? I think it's something that's going to be more and more important in the new age of COVID-19 that we're living in. And I do also think that it's really about the narrative of setting up the story and the outline of the slides and figuring out entry points, exit points of the various different participants, and even, you know, even incentives along the way for those to continue being on the online meeting. So I think that it'll be more and more important to think through the audiences and in a sales pitch environment, how that's going to be different than internal.
Absolutely. Thanks, Bob. So a lot of pre-planning is required to make that successful. So I can't remember the exact statistic, but when you're doing like a 10-deck presentation, you know, maybe it takes you 20 minutes to deliver it, but the expectation, it could take you 3 days to prepare it to make it effective, and knowing when you're going to have that interaction. That I love the jump in and jump out points, Bob. Thank you. Anything else for this? I'm seeing some great things in the chat about different things that you could use to make your meetings or your sales pitch interactive and more interesting for people.
Hey, Jill, I just wanted to mention, sorry, I have a little call center going on here. But I just wanted to mention, sometimes these tools are not necessarily approved for government use. And so a fallback for that situation is just using OneNote, because it does have some draw tools in there. Like if you need to, like our developers need to collaborate and they need to have something secure, then we can just use the OneNote from our government's suite.
Thank you, Nicole. That's a good point. I used to work for a company where they were very limited on external tools that we could use. So we really exploited it. Matt's nodding his head. Hey, Matt, remember? We exploited all the options in WebEx because that was approved. We used their virtual whiteboard and things like that rather than using third-party tools. Awesome. Okay, so we talked about different tools that we can use. It's also important to be a strong facilitator, not just in virtual meetings, but in all meetings. So here's just a couple of tips to make those meetings or presentations more effective. First of all, when you're meeting, maybe you're meeting with the same people each time, or maybe it's a new group each time, note who is and isn't participating. So when I start yapping, it's hard for me to know who's participating, who isn't. So that would be something for Danny potentially to monitor. And then Danny, if you could like tell me, hey, we haven't heard from Bob this whole time. What can we do to help engage Bob in this meeting? Let's try that out, Danny.
Well, you know, Bob, you're stellar. You spoke up, so I don't want to pick on you.
So
we
have a Bob. I use Bob as my go-to name.
Yeah, we do have a Bob, and Bob was great. But I do think, I mean, it's a good point, Jill, and especially who is and who isn't participating. And I do think this goes back to one of the first poll questions, which is it's hard to read body language when you're in a virtual meeting, because it's hard to know whether somebody feels comfortable or doesn't feel comfortable being called on. So, you don't necessarily want to bring somebody out into the mix or call somebody out if maybe they're not feeling that wouldn't be a comfortable place for them to be. But that being said, I think that, for somebody to facilitate, like a great example would be, Kimberly, your hats are great, and also you're very present on the chat. So even though you might not be speaking up vocally, I could, based on this being a virtual meeting, I could still say, well, Kimberly seems participatory. Maybe I would like to see her, address the group as a whole, and I could call you out. And that'd be a safe assumption to say that you'd be comfortable doing that, right?
Is participatory a word? I like it.
Yeah, participatory is a word. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I love that. And there's more than one way to participate. One, you can just jump in and talk. Others are using a chat or using different tools to participate. It doesn't mean you have to like be that verbose person who is always, hogging the limelight to participate. Another thing, sometimes we get in our meetings and we're just yapping. We have our agenda and we have two people doing all the talking rather than asking questions. We try to design our trainings and our online meetings where we're getting information from everybody, asking questions, powerful questions that make people start thinking and strategizing. And then we hear that feedback and we want to build on those ideas that people have from those questions. Again, we talked about this a little bit already. Have methods for nonverbal responses. Hey, using the chat, monitoring that. Maybe we have a Slack channel open at the same time where people can contribute that way rather than having to speak up in a meeting. Sometimes it's hard, especially if you have a lot of people in a meeting and people aren't comfortable doing that. Again, use the breakout rooms, create those smaller groups, and people are much more likely to participate in a group of 3 people than 100 people. And just encouraging multiple voices, saying, okay, who else? We haven't heard from other people. What do other people think? And just leave that space and wait for people to step up and make their comments or their questions. So I use what I call the 7-second rule. When I ask a question or encourage some comments, I will wait for 7 seconds. I'll actually count in my head, and usually somebody will step up and share their answer or their perspective. If they don't, they probably didn't understand the question, so I have to rephrase it. So let's try that, Danny. Do you have a question you can ask, or I can, and then we'll wait 7 seconds and see who responds.
Yeah, well, let's see. I'm curious. So David just made a comment via chat that he has a bank of sound effects that he uses to add some levity, and I think that that's great. But I am curious as to how do you utilize those sound effects in a meeting, for instance?
Yeah, so sometimes if people are presenting something, at the end of their presentation, I'll give them audience applause sound effect or woohoo or something like that. It's just a way to break things up and make it interesting.
I love that.
Awesome.
How do you do that? I was thinking about that last night. Like, wouldn't it be so cool if I had a button and be like, like laughter?
Yeah, no, I just randomly Google, waves online and just play them through the browser. Nothing high tech at all.
All right, let's add that to our toolbox, Danny.
Yeah, and actually we do have a question. Does anybody know if there are sound effects built into Zoom as a feature?
I looked
Maybe
for them
not.
the other day and I didn't see any.
Do not
Matt
exist.
says soundboards online. Oh, that you can connect to your computer. Awesome sauce.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm so excited. Watch out, Excella Training.
And actually, David, well done. I was counting to 7 in my head, and I was at 6 after I asked the question, and you chimed in just in time. So congratulations.
All right. And again, visualize everything as much as possible. So we tend to go into, hey, I just don't want to prepare. I just want to talk and yap. But if it's just talking, there's no visuals, it's easier for people to tune out. We want to show, even if it's just the camera or you're typing notes as you go and everyone's watching that, it's a lot more interactive and people will be more engaged. All right, next, getting towards the end here, build your virtual social networks. So when we are in the office together and we're seeing people, we naturally just say, hey, Bill, hey, Bob, I gotta keep using Bob here. Hey, Sally. And you start to connect and bond with each other and create that social network, which makes you more effective as a team and you work better together. It's not so natural when you're doing virtual meetings. So in fact, my husband, he works for Salesforce, and he mentioned this yesterday, that they're encouraged to have what they call virtual coffee breaks or water cooler chats. So his boss has set up these regular scheduled short meetings where anyone can join. You don't have to, there's no obligation. And people just come and they just chit chat, kind of like we did before this meeting started. Hey, any good movies you're seeing? Hey, how's the quarantine going? And having that opportunity to get to know each other will help your meetings be more effective because people will be comfortable sharing ideas and talking with one another. So he has them set up, they're regularly scheduled, and people join and
Sorry to jump in there, Bill.
can.
Reminds me of something that we used to do in college.
Oh, tell us, Ron.
When we were cramming for an exam, we lived on a floor with like 5 or 6 people. We would cram for 45 minutes and then take a 10-15-minute break, and everybody would come to the common room. So that kind of the same thing now with the ones who were in the coffee breaks.
Yes,
It was really
I love
like
that.
a stopping point, and nobody had to come there. Like if you were really deep into something, you didn't have to come there. But it was like, yeah, you take 5, 10 minute, 15-minute break, and then you go back to it.
I love that, like a virtual break room. I love it. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great.
Also, I was thinking about this yesterday. Back when I used to work at a different place, we would just Slack each other and say, hey, who needs to go get water? And we'd all just meet in the break room for like 10 minutes just to, chit chat and have a little bit of a break and get to know each other. So potentially, and I'm going to start doing this at Excella Training, so watch out, coworkers, just prompt to say, boom, I have a virtual meeting. Who wants to chit chat for 10 minutes? And again, you don't want to have an agenda for these. Sorry, I'm looking at the chat. We used to have dance breaks every hour from Kimberly. I love that. You can have a dance break. Be sure to turn your cameras on, or don't. For me, probably you don't want to see me dance. All right, so again, opening your meetings with a time box witty banter. So I've actually done this for years, and a lot of people said, Jill's so silly, she shouldn't do that, it's dumb. But it really helps build that social network, and it helps people be more encouraged to talk. So I read, I couldn't find the quote, but people who talk at the beginning of a meeting, particularly an online meeting, or before it starts, are more likely to participate throughout the meeting. So before you start, I usually take maybe the first 3 minutes or even 5 minutes and just chit chat with the participants. So some different ideas. You can just propose some fun topic, something relevant. COVID-19, so much comedy material from that, right? That sounds bad. Sorry, Danny's looking at me weird.
No, I'm going to moderate that one, Jill. Fun? Question mark? I don't think so.
Okay, fun, funny. Everything has a fun thing. Sorry, help me out, Danny. What are some other topics that we could always like talk about that aren't going to offend people?
Oh, well, I mean, the talk of the town is and appropriate for this meeting too, is what virtual hangouts are folks using with their families. One, for instance, that we've discovered is House Party, which if you all aren't in the House Party, you can look into that. Different ways of connecting with each other. So it's an app where you can group chat, that games are built into it. So your families can still have game nights virtually, that kind of thing. Yeah.
I don't know about that. I'm going to write that in the chat. It's just like, is it online, House Party, whatever?
Yeah, it's an app that you just download on your phone, and
it's an app.
Yeah, there's an app for that. But yeah, things of that nature. That's they just kind of keep things going, especially in light of the strange circumstances we're in right now. I think a lot of the way that people are communicating is just what tools are you using, or how are you getting through it, or how are you staying connected?
Oh, see, now
what's on Netflix?
Oh, so yeah, that's interesting, because I figured this is a great opportunity to not have to see my family. Thanks, Danny.
You're welcome. Bob liked that one, Joe. We got a good laugh out of Bob on that one.
Absolutely. Yes, thank you.
Okay, I love to
and Bob, while we got you here, I do see you said you did ask a question. How can you incorporate real-time social media in the presentation? Do you mind expounding upon that a little bit?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that, whether it be a real-time Twitter feed or someone's LinkedIn screen, especially for business meetings, where so much of it is about what's topical and relevant. And I was just wondering if there are any possibilities, whether again visually, whether it be split screen or something of just going on someone's LinkedIn feed.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, Jill, if you could speak to that too. I mean, especially from Zoom anyway, there would be the share screen option, but depending on the presentation and how it's built in, I don't know of an extra tool set that would enable that.
Or
Jill,
even,
do you?
yeah, or even YouTube, where, you know, you want it, you might break in the presentation and show a YouTube video split screen. I'm just curious.
Yes, yes, absolutely. In fact, that's so funny because I was doing some research last night, and Zoom does have that capability. I haven't used it yet to do the split screen. During my trainings, I share a lot of YouTube videos. You just do a share screen, and you have to enable audio so everybody can see it and hear it, and it's a great like pivot point. That you can do. You can share that anytime. I like to download those to my hard drive, so I don't have as many technical difficulties. But yeah, there are tools to do that. Absolutely. All right, just a couple other things. Let's move on from here. Continuous learning. Of course, with any human interactions, there's never going to be one right way, particularly with online meetings or webinars, so to speak. There's always new tools out there. There's opportunities to collaborate in different ways. So I encourage you to continue experimenting and adapting. Hey, this tool worked great. Well, why don't we try this other tool? Let's see how that works. That's not so good. Continually doing that feedback loop and see what works for you, and then share that with the rest of us. We would love to hear more from your experiences, if you don't mind. Maybe we'll set up some kind of a forum. I'm just like spitballing here, Danny, where people can share a blog. I've wanted to do a blog. We could do that there. What do you think, Danny? You help me out, buddy?
I am sorry because I was multitasking, so I missed your first part of that.
I love the honesty.
Yeah, I mean, that's again one of the challenges of the virtual meeting. Yeah, I was busy. Oh, Kimberly, yes, I was busted, but I owned up to it, Kimberly. That's the number one thing. So yes, I'm sorry, Jill, if you would like to repeat the question.
Well, then I forgot what I was saying because I was multitasking while you were talking. So, and that happens all the time. And it's like, oh, I'm sorry, can you repeat that? That's okay. Let's just don't do it like the whole meeting. And just like you said, just be honest and upfront with it. I love that. All right, I'm going to share one other slideshow real quick as we close out. So Hunter will like me. No, she probably will never like me. Okay.
Hang in there, Jill.
I'm just kidding. Okay, hold on. So as we wrap up, we've just got a few more minutes. Any other last thoughts? We've covered a lot of stuff in a very quick amount of time. I would love to get any last thoughts from people and share them with the rest of us.
Oh, thanks, Jennifer. So Jill, Jennifer says, this has been wonderful, exclamation point. Yes.
Jill, I just wanted to second that thought about having the chat, the informal chat at the beginning for people to kind of get to know each other. I just wanted to share a story. So last night, yesterday was Monday, right? I'm losing track of days. Last night we had our meetup, and we used basically the first half an hour when we would normally in person have drinks and food and chat and whatever. So we used that as a virtual mingle and a chance for everybody to iron out their technical difficulties. And so people were chatting, you know, where they're from or where they live. And then one guy, Omar, said, hey, everybody. And I was starting to chat with him, and he shared a video, because our check-in question was, how are you coping in our current times of social distancing? And he shared a video of one of his neighbors whose son was supposed to have a birthday party and couldn't. And they did a YouTube recording of it where they basically had a parade for him instead. So all of their friends, the parents of the friends, drove by in their cars, beeping and honking and holding out signs saying happy birthday as they drove by.
I love that. Thank you, Nicole. That's awesome. And like the first thing you said, having like a virtual happy hour. It's kind of
Yeah.
when you said we're drinks. I love that. That would be a fun meeting. We should do that, Excella Training folk.
Yes, this was after hours.
It's after hours. It's all good.
So we did have a question too, just come up. Let me see here. So Jessica, to answer your question, and for those of you still on the line, Excella Training, we do have some exciting news in addition to these webinars that we'll be holding on the last Wednesday of every month. For the month of April, we are teaching our exceptional high quality trainings virtually. So the certifying bodies, Scrum Alliance, Kanban University, Scaled Agile, they are allowing certified classes to be taught virtually, and we're at the cutting edge of that training. You could see the slide here in front of you. These are going to be our April classes. Registration is open, and we do have some virtual pricing at $9.95. You can find the full list at excellatraining.com. We do plan to be back to in-person trainings as soon as possible, but these classes listed here are all virtual options. So thank you, Jessica. Good question. excellatraining.com. And myself or Tiffany, who's on the line, will most likely help you if you have any other questions regarding the training. You can email us at logistics@excellatraining.com is how you can reach us via email.
Cool. Could someone plop that in the chat, Tiffany or Danny?
Yes.
The contact information.
Mm-hmm.
Cool beans. It is, my clock says it's Baltimore Oriole o'clock, so that's the top of our hour. We're gonna stand for another 15 minutes if you're interested in chatting. I can't figure out how to turn it off. So yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, everybody. This has been wonderful. I appreciate all your feedback and your attention. Good luck on all your online meetings. They're gonna rock.
Thank you. This was great. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Yeah, thanks so much. Stay sane.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
You too. Bye-bye.
You too, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.